Okay, here's something that might blow your mind a bit. We're talking about an industry worth over $50 billion globally.
50 billion, that's huge.
It is. But here's the kicker. Unlike the medicines you get prescribed, the ones that go through years of rigorous testing, clinical trials, FDA pre-approval, these supplement products, they can land right on the shelf, right in your hands, without ever proving they're safe or that they actually work beforehand.
Yeah, it's not just a market. It's kind of like the nutritional Wild West out there. It operates under a totally different playbook than, say, your pharmacy medication.
Absolutely. And, well, that chaos is exactly what we're diving into today. If you've ever just stood there in a store staring at rows and rows of these bright bottles, the fat burners, the brain boosters, and wondered, is this actually science or am I just paying for, expensive dust in a fancy package? Then this deep dive, this is your shortcut.
Mm-hmm. Our goal here is really to help you shift from being, let's say, a hopeful buyer to more of an informed skeptic, a smart consumer. We're going to pull back the curtain on the specific compounds, the ones that truly are backed by solid evidence, hundreds of clinical trials sometimes.
Yeah, the stuff that, honestly, most people, maybe 99% of consumers, completely miss when they're trying to navigate that wellness aisle.
Exactly. We've gone through a lot of material for this, looked at the regulations, the actual laws that let this whole hype machine run wild. We dove deep into scientific reviews on specific things like creatine, for instance.
And even the psychology, why you sometimes feel like a supplement is working, even if biochemically maybe not much is happening. It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. So, okay, let's unpack it all. We want to hand you, the listener, a clear, evidence-based way to think about this, a sort of hierarchy for making smart choices about supplements, moving past the flashy ads straight to the data.
Okay, so to really get why the marketing hype is just so loud, we have to start at the very beginning, the foundation. It's this piece of legislation called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. People usually just call it DSHEA.
DSHEA, yeah, that's the absolute key here.
Mm-hmm.
Before 94, supplements were sort of treated more like food additives under stricter rules in some ways. But DSHEA, it totally changed the game.
How so?
Well, it created this whole separate category just for dietary supplements. And crucially, it shifted the main responsibility, the burden of proof for safety and effectiveness squarely onto the manufacturer, not the FDA.
That's a really big shift, and I think it's something most of us don't fully grasp. When a drug company wants to sell a new medicine,
Right.
They have to spend, years, sometimes a decade, pushing it through clinical trials, phase 1, 2, 3, proving it's safe and effective for what they say it does. And then they need the FDA's green light before it ever hits the market.
Precisely. Years of work, millions, sometimes billions of dollars in research and development. Supplements. They live in a different reality under DSHEA. Manufacturers can make these things called structure-function claims.
Okay, what are those exactly? Sounds a bit vague.
Oh, they often are. They're statements about how a nutrient might affect the normal structure or function of the body. Things like supports joint health or promotes relaxation, maybe boosts energy levels. You see them everywhere.
And the FDA's review of those claims before the product goes on sale?
Basically non-existent. The company just needs to have some data, often their own internal data, suggesting the claim is truthful and not misleading. And they only have to notify the FDA within 30 days after they start making the claim.
Notify, not ask permission.
Nope. No pre-approval needed for safety, no pre-approval for whether it actually works. The FDA's role shifts almost entirely to what's called post-market surveillance.
Meaning they wait for problems to show up.
Essentially, yes. They act after adverse events are reported by consumers or doctors, or if they find a product is adulterated, or if the company makes an illegal claim. So in a way, consumers are kind of the first line of defense, the early warning system.
That's a bit scary, honestly.
Yeah.
And our sources really emphasize that this whole system relies on people kind of glossing over one tiny but critical phrase that has to be on the label by law.
Yes, the disclaimer. You'll usually find it in small print somewhere.
Yeah.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Right. FDA has not evaluated this claim. That's the legal admission, hidden in plain sight, that it hasn't gone through the drug approval process.
Exactly. And even when the FDA does find a problem, like a company claiming their supplement cures cancer, which is an illegal disease claim, their enforcement mechanism can be pretty slow. Often starts with warning letters. It's not like they can just instantly pull everything off the shelves nationwide in most cases. It's a cumbersome process.
So the system basically allows products to exist until they cause harm, or until a company gets caught making really blatant false claims. It explains all that vague, promising language in the ads, doesn't it? They're walking a fine legal line.
They absolutely are. And what it means for you, the listener, is that you simply cannot take label claims at face value. You have to become your own investigator and look for independent external science. You can't rely on the company's marketing.
Okay, so that need to rely on external science to be your own detective, that actually brings us to some good news. Because amidst all that noise and, frankly, junk, there are a few compounds out there that really do stand up to rigorous scientific scrutiny.
Definitely. If you were to build like an evidence pyramid for supplements, there's one that sits right at the very top. It's the undisputed gold standard for both effectiveness and safety. Creatine monohydrate.
Creatine, okay. Yeah, most people who lift weights have heard of it. But when we say scientific backing here, we need to be really clear about the scale of evidence we're talking about. This isn't just one or two small studies, right?
Not even close. The sheer volume of research is what makes creatine unique. We're talking, based on our sources, over 680 peer-reviewed clinical trials. Think about that.
Wow.
Neighbors involved more than 26,000 participants. These aren't just college athletes either. The research spans from infants who might need metabolic support all the way up to the elderly, even centenarians.
That's an incredible amount of data. So, okay, break it down for us. What's creatine actually doing in the body? How does it work?
So at its core, creatine acts like a rapid energy reserve, especially for your muscles. When you do something really intense and short, like lifting a heavy weight or a quick sprint, your body burns through its main energy currency, which is called ATP adenosine triphosphate.
Good.
Creatine phosphate helps your body regenerate that ATP fuel extremely quickly, much faster than other energy systems can kick in. So the result is you can potentially lift more weight, get an extra rep or two, sprint a little harder. Over time, combined with training, this leads to greater strength, more muscle mass, and better performance in those high-intensity bursts.
Makes sense for the gym. But here's where our research got really interesting, because it seems the benefits go way beyond just muscles. There's this cognitive aha moment that a lot of people miss.
Yes, the brain boost. It's fascinating. Your brain is incredibly energy hungry, just like your muscles. It uses a ton of ATP. And recent research, including a big 2024 meta-analysis we looked at, suggests creatine supplementation can actually have beneficial effects on cognitive function in adults.
Like what kind of effects?
Things like memory, processing speed, especially under conditions where the brain is stressed, like sleep deprivation or complex tasks. It seems higher creatine levels in the brain might help maintain that energy supply for cognitive processes. There's even data suggesting higher baseline levels are linked to better cognition overall, particularly as we age. It might play a role in brain energy.
Okay, that's pretty compelling. Now, we have to address the myths. For years, you heard stuff about creatine causing kidney damage, dehydration, cramps. It scared a lot of people off.
Oh, absolutely. Those myths have persisted for decades, but it's time, really, to put them to rest with the actual data. The safety profile for creatine monohydrate is exceptionally strong.
How strong?
Well, we looked at a huge analysis covering adverse event reports from multiple countries, over 28.4 million reports examined globally. And despite billions of doses of creatine being consumed over the last 30 years, creatine was mentioned in only about 0.00007% of those reports.
0.0007%. That's basically nothing. Statistically insignificant noise almost.
Exactly. It's incredibly low. And importantly, in well-controlled clinical trials where they directly compare a creatine group to a placebo group, the types and frequency of side effects reported are virtually identical between the two groups. Things like stomach upset or muscle cramps happen just as often with the sugar pill.
So the science is clear.
Yeah.
Used correctly, it's safe.
Overwhelmingly so. Decades of research confirm its safety for long-term use within the recommended guidelines. The old myths are a perfect example of how outdated information, or maybe just misunderstandings, can stick around long after science has moved on.
Okay, so for someone listening who's thinking, all right, maybe I should try this, what's the standard evidence-based way to take it? The dosing protocol?
The most common approach is to saturate your muscles first. You can do this relatively quickly with what's called a loading phase. That's typically about 0.3 grams per kilogram of your body weight per per day.
Okay, zero point 0.3 grams per kilo.
Yeah. And you'd usually split that total amount into several smaller doses throughout the day, maybe 4 or 5 doses. You do that for about 5 to 7 days. That gets your muscle stores filled up fast.
And then after that loading week.
Then you switch to a maintenance phase. This is a much lower dose, usually around 0.05 to 0.15 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. So maybe 3 to 5 grams total for most people. That smaller daily dose is enough to keep your muscle stores topped up.
Does it matter when you take it? Like before or after a workout?
Honestly, the research suggests timing isn't nearly as critical as just being consistent. Taking it daily during the maintenance phase is the key thing. Whether it's morning, noon, or night probably makes very little difference in the long run. Just get it in consistently.
All right, so if creatine is the champ for that quick burst of power and energy, let's shift gears to another popular one, beta-alanine. You called this one a precision tool, which I like. It sounds like it's not quite as broad in its effects.
That's a perfect description, yeah. Beta-alanine works very differently from creatine. It doesn't directly provide energy. Instead, it's one of the building blocks, the limiting precursor, actually, for a molecule in your muscles called carnosine.
Carnosine. Okay, what does that do?
Carnosine acts primarily as an acid buffer inside your muscle cells. When you're doing really intense exercise, especially stuff that lasts a bit longer, like maybe a minute or more,
Yeah.
your muscles start producing lactic acid and hydrogen ions. That buildup of acidity is a major cause of that burning sensation and fatigue that forces you to slow down or stop.
Ah, the burn. So beta-alanine helps you fight that burn.
Precisely. By taking beta-alanine consistently, you increase the levels of carnosine stored in your muscles. More carnosine means better buffering capacity against that acid buildup. It helps delay the onset of fatigue, allowing you to sustain high-intensity effort for longer.
So, unlike creatine for the quick sprint, this is more for what kind of activities?
It's really specific. Its main benefit kicks in for high-intensity activities that last roughly between 60 seconds and 240 seconds. So think about things like a 400-meter or 800-meter run, a really tough CrossFit WOD with sustained effort, rowing, or maybe repeated sprints in a team sport where you need to recover quickly between bursts.
Okay, that's 60 to 240 second window. That's quite specific. And can we actually measure the improvement?
We can. Meta-analyses, which combine results from multiple studies, show a median improvement of about 2.85% in exercise performance measures specifically within that time frame.
2.85%. Now, that might not sound like a huge number to a casual gym goer.
Maybe not, but in any kind of competitive setting, 2.85% is massive. Think about a cyclist doing a 4-minute time trial. Shaving off 2.85%. That's like 7 seconds. That could easily be the difference between winning and losing. So while you might not feel it quite as dramatically day-to-day as creatine, for athletes pushing their limits in those specific durations, it can be a real performance enhancer.
I like seeing the real-world proof, too.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources mentioned a specific study from 2024 looking at volleyball players.
Right, that was a good example. They gave volleyball players about 4.8 grams of beta-alanine daily for 8 weeks, and they found measurable improvements in both their vertical jump height and their horizontal jump distance. That suggests better power endurance, being able to maintain explosive power for longer or through repeated efforts.
Interesting. And the dosing for beta-alanine,
Yeah.
is it similar to creatine?
It's also about consistency, but the numbers are different. The optimal dose seems to be around 4 to 6 grams per day. And like creatine, you need to take it consistently for several weeks, maybe 4 weeks or more, to really build up those muscle carnosine stores to effective levels. It doesn't work instantly.
Any side effects with this one?
The main one people notice is something called paresthesia. It's a harmless tingling or pins and needles sensation, often felt on the skin, like the face, neck, or hands, shortly after taking a dose.
Ah, the beta-alanine tingles.
Exactly. It's temporary and harmless, just a sign that it's being absorbed. Some people find it annoying, others don't mind it. You can often minimize it by splitting the daily dose into smaller amounts taken throughout the day, or by using a sustained release formula.
Okay, so we've hit the heavy hitters, the ones with really strong, broad evidence like creatine, and the precision tools like beta-alanine. Now let's wade into slightly murkier waters. This is the category where things get a bit more nuanced, where the evidence might be moderate, or the benefits really depend heavily on your individual situation, like if you have a deficiency.
Yeah, this is definitely the gray area. And because it's less clear-cut, this is often where marketing hype gets turned up to 11, trying to make marginal or very specific benefits sound like universal game changers.
Let's start with a giant in the industry, protein powders. Walk into any supplement store and the marketing battle is just fierce, isn't it? Whey versus casein, isolate versus concentrate, hydrolyze this, rapid absorption that. It feels like you're making a huge mistake if you don't pick the right one, usually the most expensive one.
Oh, the battle is intense. You've got whey protein, which is marketed heavily for its fast absorption and its high content of leucine, an amino acid key for muscle building. Then there's casein, the slow protein, often pitched as ideal for taking before bed to prevent muscle breakdown overnight.
So should the listener be agonizing over whether to get the fast whey or the slow casein? Does it really make that much difference?
Honestly, for most people, especially looking at long-term results like building muscle or strength, the scientific consensus is probably not much. The practical differences seem to be minimal.
Really? Minimal, despite all the ads.
Yeah. We looked at research, for example, an 8-week study comparing female athletes who took either whey or casein after their workouts, and the outcome. They found identical improvements in strength gains and body composition between the two groups.
Identical. Okay, so why does the whole fast versus slow absorption thing seem to matter so little in the long run then?
Well, it likely ties back to a concept called the leucine threshold. Leucine, as I mentioned, is a key trigger for muscle protein synthesis, the process of building muscle. But your muscles only respond up to a certain point.
Okay.
Once you consume enough protein to hit that threshold, typically around 2 to 3 grams of leucine in a single serving, the muscle building signal is basically switched on as much as it's going to be for that period. Getting more leucine faster doesn't necessarily make the signal stronger or last longer in a way that significantly impacts long-term gains for most people.
So hitting that threshold maybe a few times throughout the day is the more important factor rather than the exact speed of one particular protein source.
Exactly. The total amount of high-quality protein you consume over the entire day seems to be the strongest predictor of muscle size and strength gains from training. Timing and type appear to be secondary factors, much less important than just hitting your overall daily protein target consistently.
So where do powders fit in then? Are they useless?
Not at all. Protein powders offer incredible convenience. If you have high protein needs, say you're an athlete or trying to build significant muscle, or if you just have a busy lifestyle, getting 150 or 200 grams of protein solely from whole foods can be challenging and time-consuming. Powders make hitting that number much easier.
But they aren't necessarily better than whole foods.
Generally, no. Whole food protein sources, things like chicken, fish, eggs, dairy, legumes, tofu, come packaged with a whole matrix of other beneficial nutrients. Vitamins, minerals, fiber, healthy fats. They offer better nutrient synergy. Plus, whole foods tend to be more satiating, helping with appetite control, and often provide better overall nutritional value for your money. So think of protein powder as a convenient tool to help you reach your daily protein goal, not necessarily a superior source of nutrition compared to whole foods.
Okay, let's switch gears to vitamin D. This feels different from protein or creatine, right? This isn't usually about boosting performance in the gym. It's more fundamental health. And it seems driven by a huge, well-documented deficiency problem in the population.
Absolutely. Vitamin D deficiency is a major global public health issue. Huge numbers of people, especially those living in northern latitudes, people with darker skin, or those who spend most of their time indoors, simply don't get enough vitamin D from sunlight, which is our primary natural source. And dietary sources are relatively limited.
And yet the consequences of being deficient are serious, right?
Mm.
It's not just trivial.
Not at all. It's strongly linked to poor bone health, osteomalacia in adults, rickets in children. But the research now suggests links to potentially increased risk for various other issues too, like immune dysfunction, maybe some chronic diseases, though that's more complex. So for many, many people, supplementation isn't just optional for optimization, it's actually essential to correct or prevent a deficiency.
So given its importance, what does the evidence tell us about effective and safe dosing for the average adult?
Well, looking at large reviews and comprehensive analyses of studies, the data points towards daily supplementation with 2,000 international units, IU, which is equivalent to 50 micrograms of vitamin D3.
Okay, 2,000 IU of D3 specifically. Why D3?
D3, or cholecalciferol, is the form our bodies naturally synthesize in the skin when exposed to UVB sunlight. D2, ogocalciferol, usually comes from plant sources or fortified foods. While both can raise blood levels, most studies suggest D3 is generally more effective and leads to a more sustained increase in serum vitamin D levels.
And why 2,000 IU? Why that specific number?
That dose has emerged from large randomized controlled trials as being effective for the vast majority, over 90% of adults, to safely raise their blood levels of vitamin D above the commonly accepted optimal markers, which is usually considered to be around 30 nanograms per milliliter (ngml) or 75 nanomoles per liter (nmol). And importantly, this dose has also demonstrated a strong safety profile over several years of continuous use in trials.
But it's not always quite that simple, is it? I remember reading there's complexity around individual needs and how the body uses it. It's not just about popping the pill.
That's the nuance, exactly. First, individual responses can vary. Factors like body weight, people with higher body fat may need more, baseline vitamin D status, genetics, and even gut health affecting absorption can mean some individuals might need higher doses, maybe 4,000 IU or even more, under medical guidance to reach optimal levels. Conversely, some might need less.
Okay, so testing blood levels is probably a good idea.
Ideally, yes. Testing your 25-hydroxy vitamin D level is the best way to know your actual status and tailor supplementation accordingly with your doctor. Second, and this is often overlooked, vitamin D doesn't work in isolation. It needs certain cofactors to be properly utilized by the body.
Cofactors. Like what?
Magnesium is a huge one. Magnesium is absolutely essential for the activity of enzymes involved in metabolizing vitamin D, converting it into its active form in the kidneys. So if someone is supplementing with vitamin D, but they're also deficient in magnesium, which is quite common, they might not be getting the full benefit of the vitamin D they're taking. It highlights that nutrition is systemic. You can't just focus on one nutrient in a vacuum. Vitamin K2 is another important partner for directing calcium appropriately.
All right, let's tackle another big one. Omega-3 fatty acids, usually from fish oil. This is probably one of the most heavily marketed supplements out there, especially linked to heart health and brain health. But when we dug into the science for this deep dive, wow, it got confusing fast. Highly nuanced, even contradictory results sometimes.
It really is a perfect example of the paradox you can find in modern supplement research. On the one hand, we have very clear, consistent evidence for a specific biochemical effect. Omega-3s, particularly EPA and DHA, demonstrably lower triglyceride levels in the blood.
Okay, that's solid.
Yes. The data is quite robust there. Taking about 1 gram of combined ETA and DHA daily can lower triglycerides by, on average, around 5.9 milli-GDL, according to meta-analyses. So for individuals who have high triglycerides, hypertriglyceridemia, fish oil supplementation is often recommended and is considered an evidence-based intervention.
Okay, clear benefit for high triglycerides. But the confusion seems to come in when we talk about the bigger picture, like, does taking fish oil prevent heart attacks or strokes for the average person, or someone just looking for general primary prevention? That's where the science seems to split.
Exactly. That's where the major controversy and conflicting headlines stem from, largely due to 2 huge, high-profile clinical trials that yielded dramatically different results: the REDUCE-IT trial and the STRENGTH trial.
Okay, tell us about those. What happened?
So the REDUCE trial studied a specific high-dose prescription form of pure EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, called Vascepa, in patients who already had cardiovascular disease or were at high risk, and whose triglycerides were elevated despite being on statins. And the results were striking. They found a significant reduction in major adverse cardiovascular events, like heart attacks and strokes.
Wow, so that sounds like a huge win for fish oil, or at least EPA.
It was initially hailed as such. Big news. It seemed like we finally had strong evidence for cardiovascular protection beyond just lowering triglycerides. But then came the STRENGTH trial.
Okay, what did STRENGTH do differently?
STRENGTH also studied high-risk patients on statins, using a similar high dose of omega-3s. But critically, the formulation was different. It used a mix of EPA and DHA, not pure EPA like in REDUCE-IT. And the result...
And guess, no benefit.
Exactly. The STRENGTH trial showed no significant difference in cardiovascular events between the omega-3 group and the placebo group. It was stopped early for futility. So now you have these 2 massive, well-conducted trials with similar patient populations and high doses, but completely opposite conclusions. Why?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. And the scientific debate is ongoing, but the leading theories center on 2 key differences. First, the formulation. Was it the pure EPA and REDUCE-IT that was crucial, suggesting DHA might somehow counteract the benefit or just isn't as effective for this purpose? That's one possibility.
And the second difference, you mentioned the placebo earlier.
Right, the placebo control group. This gets a bit technical, but it's really important. The STRENGTH trial used corn oil as its placebo. Corn oil is generally considered pretty inert, though some argue it might have very slight effects on lipids itself, potentially masking a small benefit from the active drug.
Okay, corn oil. What did the Reducite use?
Reduce EK used mineral oil as the placebo, and this became a major point of contention after the results came out. Some researchers raised concerns that mineral oil isn't truly inert. There's evidence suggesting it might slightly interfere with statin absorption or even slightly increase levels of LDL cholesterol and inflammatory markers in the placebo group.
Ah, so if the placebo group actually got slightly worse because of the mineral oil.
Then the group taking the active EPA drug would look significantly better by comparison, potentially exaggerating the true benefit of the EPA itself.
Okay, I see. That makes the interpretation really tricky.
Incredibly tricky. It shows just how complex these large trials are and how seemingly small choices in study design, the specific formulation, the type of placebo, can have massive impacts on the results and lead to years of debate. So, the practical takeaway for the listener. Omega-3s have clear, proven benefits for lowering high triglycerides, for general heart attack and stroke prevention in otherwise healthy people, or even in many high-risk groups. The evidence is currently mixed, conflicting, and frankly, still being figured out. It's not the clear-cut panacea it's often marketed as.
Okay, we've wrestled with the biochemistry, the clinical trials, the conflicting data. Now let's pivot and talk about something just as powerful, maybe even more so in this industry, the mind games. Understanding the psychology behind why we take supplements and why we often feel they work is absolutely essential because, honestly, it explains why so many products with weak evidence still sell like crazy.
You're absolutely right. This brings us straight into the fascinating world of the placebo effect. In an industry built on hope and hype, the placebo effect isn't just a side note. It's arguably one of the most potent active ingredients driving sales and perceived results. Hashtag 4.1, the placebo effect in supplementation.
Now, people often hear placebo and think it means it's all in your head, like it's imaginary or fake.
Yeah.
But the research we looked at is clear. Placebos can and do produce real, measurable physiological changes in the body.
They absolutely do. It's not just imagination. When you take something, even if it's just a sugar pill, but you believe it will help, and maybe it's given to you by someone you trust, or it comes with a really compelling story, this rare Amazonian root will boost your focus. That belief and expectation triggers actual neurochemical responses in your brain.
Like what?
Things like the release of endogenous opioids, your body's natural painkillers, or changes in dopamine levels related to reward and motivation, or shifts in stress hormone pathways. These real changes can affect how you perceive pain, your mood, your energy levels, even things like heart rate or immune responses in some cases.
And this is super relevant for supplements, right?
Yeah.
Because so many of the claimed benefits are subjective things, feeling more energetic, less stressed, more focused, sleeping better.
Exactly. Those objective improvements are prime territory for the placebo effect. Think about testimonials. People genuinely do feel better after taking a new supplement sometimes. But clinical trials consistently show that a significant portion of participants who receive the placebo also report these same kinds of improvements, often at very high rates.
So it makes it really hard as a consumer to know if the benefit you're feeling is from the actual ingredient in the pill or from the powerful effect of your own expectation and belief system responding to the marketing story.
Extremely difficult. If you truly believe the expensive brain booster pill is going to make you sharper, you might actually feel sharper, partly because you're paying more attention, you're motivated, and your brain's expectation pathways are firing. That feeling is real, but it might have little to do with the actual herbs in the capsule.
Wow.
Hashtag 4.2, the nocebo effect, the Easter egg moment.
Okay, so that's the power of positive expectation. Now for the twist, the kind of hidden bonus insight, the other side of that psychological coin, the nocebo effect. This is where negative expectations can actually create negative outcomes.
The nocebo effect, yeah, it's the placebo's evil twin, essentially. If you anticipate a negative side effect from something, that negative expectation can actually make you generate that symptom, even if the substance itself is totally inert or harmless. It's the power of negative belief made manifest.
And the data on this is pretty startling. Our sources highlighted how evident this became during the massive global rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. That provided a huge real-world experiment on mass expectation, both positive and negative.
It really did. The scale was unprecedented. And some fascinating analyses emerged afterwards. One study we reviewed estimated that something like 72% of the adverse effects reported after the first COVID vaccine dose, things like headache, fatigue, muscle aches, weren't directly caused by the vaccine components themselves, but were attributable to the nocebo response. People were primed by media reports and anxiety to expect side effects, and so many did experience them, driven by that negative expectation.
72% after the first dose. That's incredible. And it was still high after the second.
Still significant, yeah. Around 52% after the second dose were estimated to be nocebo-related. It just shows how powerfully our minds can influence our physical experience based on expectation and context.
Okay, now here's the witty Easter egg moment, the little detail that ties this right back into our supplement discussion. The nocebo effect seems to be particularly pronounced when it comes to expensive supplements.
Isn't that fascinating? It's this weird cognitive contradiction. When you pay a lot of money for something, like a really premium price supplement, that high cost seems to amplify both your positive expectations. You really want it to work to justify the expense, boosting the potential placebo effect, and your vigilance for potential negative effects. You're paying more attention, you're more invested, maybe a little more anxious about getting your money's worth or experiencing side effects you read about.
So the high price tag, paradoxically, makes you more likely to feel both good things and bad things.
It seems that way. You assign more power, both positive and negative, to something that required a bigger investment from you. That heightened self-monitoring and emotional investment can intensify your subjective response. Whether it's feeling amazing or noticing every tiny potential side effect, it's a mind game layered on top of the biochemistry.
Understanding the placebo and nocebo effects is a crucial first step. But step 2 is actually building yourself a practical defense system. How do you cultivate that healthy skepticism you need when you're faced with that wall of bottles and persuasive marketing?
Exactly. If you take away just one really practical skill from this deep dive, let it be the ability to spot the common marketing red flags. Because these tactics are specifically designed to bypass your rational brain and appeal to hope and emotion. Hashtag 5.1 red flags in marketing language.
Okay, let's start with the language itself. What are some of those vague, buzzwordy phrases that sound scientific or impressive but actually mean very little?
The first big one is seeing the phrase clinically proven used without any actual citation or easy link to a specific published study you can go look at. If they don't show you the proof, the claim is meaningless. It might be based on one tiny company-funded pilot study or even just test tube data.
Okay, clinically proven needs backup. What else?
Be wary of terms like a breakthrough formula, revolutionary discovery, proprietary matrix, or anything that sounds overly complex or like it's secret, cutting-edge science nobody else has. Real science tends to be more measured in its language. Also, watch out for doctor recommended without saying which doctors or if those doctors are being paid by the company.
And what about the appeal to nature? That seems really common.
Oh, hugely common. This is the natural fallacy. It's the assumption that if something is natural, it must automatically be safer, healthier, or more effective than something synthetic.
Which isn't necessarily true, right?
Not at all. Arsenic is natural. Poison ivy is natural. Nature is full of potent toxins. Conversely, many synthetic nutrients, like synthetically produced vitamin C or B vitamins, are chemically identical to their natural counterparts and work just as well, often being more stable or affordable. Marketers use the word natural purely to evoke feelings of trust, purity, and safety, but it has zero correlation with actual quality, efficacy, or lack of side effects. Don't let natural lull you into a false sense of security. Hashtag 5.2, the problem with proprietary blends.
Okay, this next one feels like maybe the biggest practical trap for consumers because it seems like a deliberate way to hide what you're actually paying for. Let's talk about proprietary blends.
Yes, proprietary blends are probably the single most common tactic used by manufacturers to obscure the actual dose of individual ingredients in their product, making it impossible to judge efficacy.
How do they work? Or rather, how do they not work for the consumer?
So a proprietary blend will list a bunch of ingredients together under a fancy-sounding name like energy amplifying complex or whatever. But instead of telling you the exact milligram amount of each ingredient in that complex, they only give you the total combined weight of the entire blend.
Okay, so you might see like super focused blend, 1,000 milligram, and then a list of 10 ingredients.
Exactly. And the ingredients within that blend are listed in order by weight, from most to least, just like on a food label. But you have no idea if the first ingredient makes up 990 milligrams of that 1,000 milligram total, and the other 9 ingredients, maybe the ones they're really hoping in the ads, are present in just tiny, ineffective fairy dust amounts.
Why is knowing the individual dose so critical?
Because all the scientific research that demonstrates a benefit for a particular supplement ingredient is dose-dependent. Studies show you need X milligrams of creatine or Y grams of beta-alanine or Z micrograms of vitamin D to achieve a specific effect. If an ingredient is hidden in a proprietary blend, you cannot verify if it's present at that evidence-based effective dose.
So you might be paying a premium for a product based on the claimed benefits of, say, ashwagandha, but it could contain only a tiny fraction of the amount used in the studies that showed those benefits.
Precisely. The manufacturer gets to legally list the ingredient on the label, satisfying regulatory requirements, but they completely hide whether it's included at a dose that actually does anything. It makes it impossible for you, the informed consumer, to compare the product to the research or even to other products. It's a huge red flag for transparency and quality. If a company uses proprietary blends, especially for the key ingredients, you should be very skeptical.
Okay, so we've talked about dodgy language and hidden doses. Since we know the FDA isn't checking these products for safety or effectiveness before they hit shelves, how can we, as consumers, get any assurance about the quality and contents of what we're buying?
This is where third-party testing and certification becomes absolutely non-negotiable. It is your single best defense mechanism against poor quality, contamination, and inaccurate labels. If a product doesn't have a reputable third-party seal, you should probably just put it back on the shelf.
Why is it so important? What are these third parties actually testing for?
Reputable third-party organizations provide independent, unbiased verification. They typically test for three main things. One, identity and purity. Does the product actually contain the ingredients listed on the label? Is it free from harmful contaminants like heavy metals, lead, arsenic, mercury, pesticides, or microbes? Two, potency or quantity. Does the product contain the amount of the ingredient that the label claims? This is huge, as underdosing is rampant. And three, especially important for athletes, banned substances. Some programs specifically screen for substances prohibited by major sports organizations to prevent accidental doping.
Okay, so who are these reputable third-party organizations? What seals should people be looking for on the packaging?
There are several good ones, but two of the most well-respected and rigorous in the U.S. market are NSF International and USP, U.S. Pharmacopoeia.
Tell us about NSF.
NSF International runs a very comprehensive program. They don't just test the final product, they audit the manufacturing facilities annually to ensure good manufacturing practices, GMPs. They test for contaminants and verify label claims. For athletes, their NSF Certified for Sport program is considered the gold standard, screening for over 280 banned substances. Seeing that blue NSF logo is a strong sign of quality control.
Okay, NSF. And the other big one? USP.
USP, the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, is the organization that actually sets official quality standards for many medicines. When they put their USP verified mark on a supplement, it means the product meets very stringent criteria similar to pharmaceutical standards.
Like what specifically?
They verify identity, purity, and potency, ensuring the product contains between 90% and 110% of the amount stated on the label for most ingredients. Crucially, USP also performs disintegration and dissolution testing.
Dissolution testing, what's that?
That checks if the pill or capsule can actually break down properly in the body within a specific time frame, so the ingredients can potentially be absorbed. It doesn't guarantee absorption, but it ensures the pill isn't just passing through you like a rock. An untested product might not even dissolve correctly.
Wow. Okay, so NSF and USP are key seals to look for. And the need for this kind of testing isn't just theoretical, right? There was that example with CVS Pharmacy highlighting real-world quality failures.
Exactly. That was a telling case study. When CVS, the major pharmacy chain, decided to implement mandatory third-party testing for all the supplements they carried under their own store brands.
Yeah, what happened?
They found that about 7% of those products initially failed the screening process. 7%. That's nearly 1 in 14 products that didn't meet basic quality standards, mostly because they didn't contain the amount of ingredients claimed on the label.
And that's from a major retailer that presumably already had some level of scrutiny in place?
Precisely. If a big player like CVS has that kind of failure rate after deciding to implement strict testing, imagine what the failure rate might be among smaller, less accountable brands, especially those sold only online with no third-party verification. That 7% statistic really underscores why you, the consumer, must prioritize products that carry a reputable third-party seal like NSF or USP. It's your best guarantee against getting ripped off or consuming something potentially unsafe.
Okay, we've covered the science behind specific ingredients, the marketing red flags to watch out for, the crucial role of third-party testing for quality. Now let's synthesize this into a final framework. Even if a product is accurately labeled and contains the right dose, there's still one more crucial factor. Can your body actually use it? This brings us to the concept of absorption, or bioavailability.
Right. Bioavailability is kind of the final hurdle in the supplement journey, the missing link that determines if what you swallow actually translates into a benefit. Absorption matters.
So define bioavailability for us again and explain why it might be even more important than just the milligram number printed on the front of the bottle.
Bioavailability, simply put, is the proportion or fraction of an ingested nutrient or compound that actually gets absorbed from your digestive tract into your bloodstream, systemic circulation, and is therefore available to be used by your body's tissues.
So a high dose doesn't mean much if it's not bioavailable.
Exactly. You could be taking a supplement with a huge dose listed on the label, but if it's formulated poorly or your body can't absorb that specific form efficiently, only a tiny percentage might actually get into your system. The rest just passes through. You might literally be paying for expensive urine or feces, not a health benefit.
Can you give us a concrete example? You mentioned coenzyme Q10 earlier, how formulation dramatically impacts its absorption.
Yeah, CoQ10 is a classic example because it's a fat-soluble molecule, which makes it inherently difficult for our water-based digestive system to absorb effectively. Research comparing different commercial CoQ10 products, even those with the exact same milligram dose listed on the label, found enormous differences in bioavailability.
How big were the differences?
Huge. For instance, a study might show that a basic dry powder formulation of CoQ10 in a capsule could result in, say, 75% lower absorption and lower blood levels compared to a more advanced formulation, like one where the CoQ10 is dissolved in oil or micellized, or uses some other lipid-based delivery system designed to enhance absorption.
So the company might boast about the high dose, but the actual delivery system, the formulation chemistry, is what really dictates whether you get the benefit.
Precisely. It highlights that smart consumers need to look beyond just the headline milligram number. You need to consider the form of the nutrient. Some forms are better absorbed than others, like magnesium glycinate versus magnesium oxide, and the delivery system. Reputable companies often invest in formulations known to improve bioavailability and might even conduct studies on their specific product, which they should make available. Good third-party certifiers like USP also look at dissolution, which is a prerequisite for absorption, the hierarchy of evidence for decisions.
Okay, so it's complex. If someone listening wants to do their own homework, cut through the marketing, and make truly informed decisions, what kind of information sources should they prioritize? What's the hierarchy of reliable evidence?
You always want to aim for the highest levels of scientific evidence. At the top of the pyramid are systematic reviews and meta-analyses. These are studies that carefully gather and synthesize the findings from multiple individual clinical trials on a specific topic, giving you a much broader and more reliable picture than any single study alone.
Okay, meta-analyses first. What's next?
Yeah. Next would be large-scale, well-designed, randomized controlled trials, RCTs, especially those that are placebo-controlled and double-blinded, published in reputable, peer-reviewed scientific journals. These are the gold standard for determining cause and effect.
And then, practically speaking, for product choice.
As we hammered home, look for products verified by independent third-party testing organizations like NSF or USP. That gives you assurance about quality, purity, and label accuracy for the specific product you're holding.
Right. And conversely, what kinds of evidence or information sources should people be really skeptical of or avoid basing serious health decisions on?
Definitely be wary of anecdotes and personal testimonials, whether from friends, online reviewers, or even celebrity endorsements. While often genuine experiences, they're highly susceptible to placebo effects and individual variation, and they don't represent rigorous scientific proof. Avoid relying on isolated, small-scale studies, especially if they were funded or conducted by the companies selling the product and haven't been replicated independently. Be very skeptical of information presented on company websites or marketing materials that isn't backed up by accessible, peer-reviewed research. And, of course, be extremely cautious about health advice or product recommendations from social media influencers, particularly if they have a financial incentive, like affiliate codes or sponsorships, which isn't always disclosed transparently. Treat marketing disguised as education with extreme caution. Questions to ask. Relevance to the learner.
Okay, this has been incredibly detailed. Before someone pulls out their wallet for that next supplement, let's give them a final quick checklist, a set of actionable questions to ask themselves.
Absolutely. 4 crucial questions for you, the listener, to run through. First, is there a documented need or deficiency? Don't just guess. Consider objective measures like a blood test, especially for nutrients like vitamin D, iron, or vitamin B12, ideally discussed with your doctor. Do you actually need this?
Okay, step 1, confirm the need. What's 2?
2. What does high-quality, peer-reviewed research actually show for the specific health benefit being claimed using the specific ingredient and form in the product at the specific dose provided? Look for those meta-analyses and RCTs we talked about. Does the science truly support the claim?
Got it. Question 3.
3. Are the claimed benefits realistic and plausible? Be highly skeptical of products that promise dramatic, rapid results, multiple unrelated benefits from a single pill, like fat burning, muscle gain, and genius-level focus all at once, or cures for serious diseases. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Apply common sense.
Good advice. And the final question, tying back to our defense system.
4. Is the company transparent and reputable? Do they clearly disclose the exact amounts of all active ingredients, avoiding those shady proprietary blends? Do they readily provide evidence of third-party testing and certification from organizations like NSF or USP right on the label or their website? If a company hides the dose, hides the quality verification, or makes unrealistic claims, just walk away. There are better options out there. Hashtag outro.
Wow. Okay, let's try and bring this all home. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've exposed the regulatory loophole, DSHEA, that allows this massive supplement market to often prioritize hype over hard evidence. But we've also highlighted the rock stars, the supplements like creatine monohydrate and, for specific uses, beta-alanine that truly are backed by mountains of solid scientific research.
Right, the exceptions that prove the rule, in a way.
And critically, we've hopefully armed you, the listener, with a consumer defense system, how to spot marketing red flags, why proprietary blends are problematic, and the absolute necessity of looking for those third-party verification seals like NSF and USP as your best guarantee of quality.
And throughout all of this, it's crucial to remember the foundational truth. A balanced, varied, whole food diet is, and always should be, the bedrock of good health and nutrition. Supplements, if used correctly and based on evidence, should only complement that solid foundation. They should address a specific documented need or provide a targeted, proven benefit. You simply cannot out-supplement a poor diet or lifestyle.
Well said. But looking ahead, this whole landscape of supplementation is likely going to get even more complex, isn't it? We're moving towards much more personalization.
Exactly. That leads us to our final provocative thought for you today. The fields of nutrigenomics, how nutrients interact with your individual genes, and truly personalized medicine are advancing rapidly. We're heading towards a future where supplement recommendations might become highly tailored based on your unique DNA, your metabolism, your microbiome.
So instead of general advice, it'll be hyper-specific to you.
Potentially, yes. But this also means that the need for you to be a discerning consumer, to be able to separate genuine, complex scientific advancements from companies simply exploiting genetic buzzwords or DNA tests for marketing purposes, that need is going to become even more critical than it is today. The hype will likely just shift to a more personalized, sciencey sounding level.
Fascinating and a little daunting.
Oh.
If you thought trying to figure out what you eat matters now, just wait until we start talking seriously about how it's interacting with your genes on a molecular level. And actually, that's a perfect lead-in. Next time on the deep dive, we are peeling back even more layers, specifically looking at how the everyday foods we eat might be directly influencing our DNA and long-term cellular health in ways we're only just beginning to understand. We'll be digging into some fascinating new research suggesting certain common kitchen staples could be talking to our genes in very unexpected, complex ways.
It's advantage stuff.
It really is. So don't miss our next deep dive into nutrigenomics and the pantry secret. It drops next week. You won't want to miss it.